Rama, 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 Hari, Rama, Rama, Hari, Rama, 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 Hari, Rama, 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 Hari, Rama, Hari, Rama, 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 Hari, Rama, Hari. Okay, devotees, let us begin. With our 37th, is it? Evening. Gosh, I forget. 37th or 38th or what? 37th. Got it. Okay. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Shrimati Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharne Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pastyacha Dejatarne Sri Krishna Chaitanya Pramanityananda Sri Advaita Gadadha Shivas Adi Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Vanchikapatrabhyascha, Kripa Sindhubhya evacha, Patitanam Pavanebhyo, Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Now we got up to, what verse was it? Sorry? 30. Oh, right. We got up to 30. Bhishma passes away. Right, okay. Right, yes, so the fourth section is Bhishma passes away, verses 30 to 43. And let's get into it right away. First of all, the translation of verse 30. 30. Just a sec. Okay, verse 30. Sorry, I'm a bit just finding the right places. Gosh. Verse 30, okay, here we go. Thereupon, that man who spoke on different subjects with thousands of meanings, and who fought on thousands of battlefields and protected thousands of men, stopped speaking, and being completely freed from all bondage, withdrew his mind from everything else and fixed his wide open eyes upon the original personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, who stood before him four-handed, dressed in yellow garments that glittered and shined. Glittered and shone, I would say, but anyway, okay. So, wow, Bhishma Dev is just about to pass away. So, okay, let's look into the purport. So, Bhishma Dev, Prabhupada says, set a glorious example regarding the important function of the human form of life. And the function is, you got to remember the Lord at the time of death. Of course, before that, you've got to prepare yourself for remembering the Lord. So Prabhupada points out the subject matter which attracts the dying man becomes the beginning of his next life. And therefore, if you're absorbed in thought of the Lord, you'll go back to Godhead without doubt. So in this regard, Srila Prabhupada quotes Bhagavad Gita chapter 8, verses 5 to 10. And they're all about coming to the time of death. Number 5, whoever at the time of death quits his body, remembering me alone, at once attains my nature. Of this there's no doubt. 6, whatever state of being one remembers when he quits his body, that state he'll attain without fail. And 7, therefore Arjuna, you should always think of me in the form of Krishna, and at the same time carry out your prescribed duty of fighting. Anyway, devotees, you can go through those verses, particularly these first 3, or most particularly the first 2, 5 and 6. And then also verse 7, but 5 and 6 are the most important, most definitive when it comes to talking about preparing oneself for the time of death and what happens at the time of death and what sort of state you should try and be in at the time of death. So then the last paragraph, so Bhishma Dev, he had this perfection of being able to leave his body at will, and now Krishna's present in front of him. Therefore he fixed his open eyes on Krishna. Out of his love for Krishna, he just wanted to just look at Krishna. And he was Prabhupada makes the point, he was a pure devotee. He wasn't the yogi type into mystical activities, different exercises and austerities and things. He was a devotee. He loved Krishna, and he'd do anything for Krishna. So Prabhupada says, simple bhakti yoga is enough to bring about perfection. Yes, and so Bhishma, he just wanted to be fixed like that. Okay. And Prabhupada concludes the purport by saying, therefore the ardent desire of Bhishma Dev was to see the person of Lord Krishna, the most lovable object, and by the grace of the Lord, Sri Bhishma Dev had this opportunity at the last stage of his breathing. And Srila Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur makes an interesting point, which is sort of more or less hinted at in the verse, but it's not totally clear, that Bhishma's eyes were completely open without blinking. Yeah, that's what his state was. He was just looking at Krishna without blinking for quite some time. Normally, of course, our eyes blink every, few seconds or something like that. So verse 31, by pure meditation, looking at Lord Sri Krishna, he at once was freed from all material inauspiciousness and was relieved all bodily pains caused by the arrow wounds. Thus all the external activities of his senses at once stopped, and he prayed transcendently to the controller of all living beings while quitting his material body. So, of course, from the previous verse, an interesting, important point, actually, which I don't know if I mentioned, no, it's not here yet. Oh, yes, it is. That Krishna manifested 4 arms. He was in his 2-armed form when he came there with the Pandavas. But now, at the request or the hint even of Bhishma, Krishna has manifested 4 arms. Right. Okay, so anyway, verse 31, we read the verse. Let's have a look at the purport here. So, Prabhupada begins by pointing out how the material body is a gift of the material energy, technically called illusion. Srila Prabhupada could have possibly put the word gift in inverted commas. It's like a booby prize, some sort of gift which is just of no value, really. So that's what the material body is. It's just a nonsense. And we get it due to forgetfulness of our relationship with the Lord. So, of course, and Prabhupada makes the point, for a pure devotee like Bhishma, Prabhupada says his illusion was removed as soon as the Lord arrived. He was never in that illusion, really. So Lord Krishna is like the sun, and in the presence of and Maya's darkness, and in the presence of the sun, there can't be darkness. So therefore, if there was any contamination, material contamination, in Bhishma Dev before the Lord came, when the Lord came, it went. And he was situated in his pure spiritual condition. Yes, it's an eternal spirit soul. So Bhishma Dev acquired those qualifications of being pure, free from contamination, the senses impure, and all of that. All these transcendental conditions were achieved by him just before he left the body due to the Lord's presence. And this shows the mercy of the Lord. He's just so merciful, and particularly to his great devotees. So therefore the Lord, Prabhupada says, thus he provided all facilities to fulfill the transcendental desires of his great devotee Sri Bhishma Dev, who began to pray as follows. So here now is Bhishma Dev praying. Bhishma Dev said, let me now invest my thinking, feeling, and willing, which was so long engaged in different subjects and occupational duties, in the all-powerful Lord Sri Krishna. He's always self-satisfied, but sometimes being the leader of the devotees, he enjoys transcendental pleasure by descending on the material world, although from him only the material world is created. So this is Bhishma speaking again. First of all, he was glorifying and explaining different things in the previous section to encourage Yudhisthira to get out of his sense of guilt. And now he's just coming to the end and therefore preparing himself and focusing himself on the Lord. So Prabhupada makes the point that Bhishma Dev was a statesman, leader of Kshatriyas and all these big things. He had a lot to think about. Yeah, really a lot to think about. But now at this time, he's just forgetting all of that and just focusing on the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Yeah, and Krishna is described here as the leader of the devotees and all-powerful. And although he's the original Lord, he comes to this world. He doesn't really have to come, I mean. Whenever there's a problem, it doesn't mean the president or the prime minister has to come to sort it out. But Krishna comes, even when all sorts of people are all mixed up and confused, but he comes in order to help them, the actual original Supreme Lord. Sometimes as himself, Krishna, sometimes as Lord Chaitanya. So, yeah, the devotees here in the verse, they were called Satvata, and the Lord is known as the chief of the Sattvatas. And but Krishna, Prabhupada says, unless one is purified from all sorts of material desires, the Lord doesn't become your leader. Yeah. Desires, of course, can't be eliminated, but they can be refocused on the Lord, purified, like that. Yeah. So the Lord then gives instructions. He gives instructions from within the heart, but Prabhupada makes the point, he only gives instructions for going back to Godhead. He doesn't give other instructions to the non-devotees. Prabhupada makes the point here. For the non-devotees who want to lord it over material nature, the Lord only sanctions their activities and becomes a witness, but he never gives them instructions for going back to Godhead. That's the difference in dealings by the Lord with the devotees and then the non-devotees. Yes, so he treats them differently. And Prabhupada gives an explanation how he treats them differently. He instructs the devotees, but the Lord is silent towards the non-devotees. Although he witnesses what they do and sees they get what they deserve. Yeah. So, ultimately, Prabhupada makes a really nice point. It's just such a nice point. Almost at the end of the purport, the Lord desires the association of his pure devotees, and for them only the Lord descends on the earth and enlivens them. He ultimately doesn't come for any other reason. To destroy the demons, reestablish religion. The only thing he really comes for, those things are incidental, but what he really comes for is to get the association of the devotees, and the devotees, they want his association. So verse 33, well, actually, sorry, there's a little comment here from Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. So he's speaking as if Bhishma is thinking, At the end of my life, my thoughts are offered to the Lord. Since my Master has come to me at the time of my passing away under the influence of his mercy, I must give him a gift. But there's nothing suitable in this abode of possessiveness and ego. Therefore I will make a gift of my thoughts alone. He doesn't feel there's anything worth giving the Lord in this world. Wait a minute. What verse was that? Was that the wrong verse? That should have been, that was 33. Sorry. Should I have done 33 or 32? No, I should have done. Have I got myself confused here? I should have done 33, right? And that's what I did. No, what verse did I just read? So I should go through the purport. No, I've been through the purport of the... I need to do 33, right? Now it's 33. Sri Krishna is the intimate... is the intimate friend of Arjuna. He's appeared on this earth in his transcendental body, which resembles the bluish color of the tamal tree. His body attracts everyone in the 3 planetary systems, upper, middle, and lower. May his glittering yellow dress and his lotus face, covered with paintings of sandalwood pulp, be the object of my attraction, and may I not desire fruit of results. Right, so, in the purport here, Prabhupada talks about the Lord descending to this world. Yes, by his internal potency. The attractive features of his body are desired in all the 3 worlds. Well, I mean, not by everyone, unfortunately. At least nowhere in the universe are there such beautiful features. They're the most attractive in the 3 worlds. That's a fact. And therefore his body is just not part of material existence. So Bhishma on his bed of arrows is remembering the dress of Krishna, which he put on when he was driving Arjuna's chariot. While the fighting was going on, Bhishma was so attracted by the glittering dress of Krishna. And indirectly, he thought how fortunate Arjuna is to have the Lord as his friend. And Prabhupada says Arjuna was always a conqueror because the Lord was his friend. So Bhishma, under those circumstances, addresses Krishna as Vijaya Sakhe, friend of Arjuna who's always victorious, because it's pleasing to the Lord when he's addressed with his devotees. So Bhishma Dev just couldn't forget how Krishna's clothes were glittering and like this. It was really amazing. And he enjoyed it because he was at least partially in the chivalrous rasa. Yeah. So, and Prabhupada makes the point that some nonsense people, they don't appreciate rasas like what Bhishma has. They'd rather go straight for the conjugal rasa, that let's focus on that, even though they're basically on the material platform. But Srimad Bhagavatam here is helping us to understand the value of the rasas, so to speak, even the rasa, chivalrous rasa. Yes. So those people who artificially try to approach the conjugal rasa, they are just ridiculous. They're condemned, Prabhupada says. So, the relationship of the soul with the Lord is evolved, and it can take any form out of the 5 rasas. And for a genuine devotee, it doesn't matter which rasa they're in. They're not thinking, oh, I must be in the conjugal rasa. If not, then that's no good. But whatever the Lord gives them, whatever is their eternal position, they are happy about that. And Prabhupada says, Bhishma Dev is a concrete example of this, and it should be carefully observed how the great general is transcendentally related with the Lord. It's really important. So there are a couple of analogies here. Let's just see. Regarding, is it? Where is it? Where is it? That Prabhupada says that, anyway, Prabhupada says in the purport that Sri Bhishma Dev's throwing of sharp arrows at the transcendental body of the Lord. I'm trying to find this. Is it really here? Or are my notes confused? Maybe it's the next purport. It is. Okay, I've got an analogy which belongs in the next, with the next verse, but I've put it in the wrong place. So, let's go on to verse 34. Verse 34. On the battlefield, where Sri Krishna attended Arjuna out of friendship, the flowing hair of Lord Krishna turned ashen due to the dust raised by the hoofs of the horses. And because of his labor, beads of sweat wetted his face. All these decorations, intensified by the wounds dealt by my sharp arrows, were enjoyed by him. Let my mind thus go unto Sri Krishna. Now this is really the chivalrous rasa. So Prabhupada makes the point that Krishna's body is the absolute form of eternity, bliss, and knowledge, or Krishna is. So he accepts any service in any of the rasas. He graciously accepts service in any of the rasas when offered to the Lord in genuine love and affection. So here's the first analogy from this purport, devotees. So Bhishma Dev is in a relation of servitorship, actually, Prabhupada says. But it's also influenced by chivalry. I mean, very heavily influenced, although the main mood is servitorship. So Prabhupada says, thus his, meaning Bhishma, his throwing of sharp arrows at the transcendental body of the Lord, is as good as the worship of another devotee who throws soft roses upon him. That's amazing, isn't it? So that's an analogy, actually, and that's just really amazing. So in the second paragraph, Bhishma is, Prabhupada points out, Bhishma is repenting that I offended the Lord by hurting him, although actually the Lord was not really hurt. In fact, you can't even really hurt the Lord because his body is spiritual. So, but just to bewilder the demons, then the Lord he seems to be like a conditioned soul, just to bewilder the conditioned souls. He seems to be like one of the conditioned souls materially encaged, just to bewilder the asuras or the non-believers who are always alert to kill the Lord. Amazing, isn't it? So then, in the third paragraph, tiny little, just one sentence. So Bhishma's piercing of the body of Lord Krishna is a sort of bewildering problem for the non-devotee atheist. But those who are devotees, liberated souls, are not bewildered. And the fourth paragraph, Bhishma is appreciating the merciful attitude of the Lord, the mood of the Lord, because he didn't abandon Arjuna, even though he was disturbed by the arrows of Bhishma, nor was he reluctant to come before Bhishma's deathbed, even though Bhishma ill-treated him, really ill-treated him. It was, on a certain level, it's just terrible. Bhishma's repentance and the Lord's merciful attitude are both unique in this picture. So then Srila Prabhupada in the fifth paragraph refers to Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's purport on this verse. And the particular point, which is also an analogy, if you're doing Bhakti Vaibhava, please note it, that the wounds created on the body of the Lord by the sharpened arrows of Bhishma Dev were as pleasing to the Lord as the biting of a fiancé who bites the body of the Lord, directed by a strong sense of sex desire, or actually, if it's the Lord, completely transcendental version of sex desire. And that biting is never taken to be like an act of aggression, even if it creates a wound. It's rather an exchange of transcendental pleasure and transcendental love. Plus, of course, as we already mentioned, the Lord's body is spiritual and cannot be hurt by any arrows. The fact that there appeared to be wounds, it was just part of the leela between the two. Yes. So Prabhupada concludes the purport by saying, the Lord enjoyed the wounds created by his great devotee Bhishma Dev, and because Bhishma Dev is a devotee in the chivalrous relation, he fixes his mind on Krishna in that wounded condition. He particularly likes to see Krishna in that condition because it arouses his affection. Sounds extraordinary, but actually that's the case. Verse 35. In obedience to the command of his friend, Lord Sri Krishna entered the arena of the battlefield of Kurukshetra between the soldiers of Arjuna and Duryodhana, and while there he shortened the lifespans of the opposite party by his merciful glance. This was done simply by his looking at the enemy. Let my mind be fixed on that Krishna. Right, so again, there's a fairly substantial purport here. So, Bhishma is noting how Krishna obediently drew Arjuna's chariot between the armies. Yes, that's Krishna's mercy. So the Lord pointed out all the important people on the other side. So of course the Lord's never an order carrier, but for his devotee, out of love, sometimes he carries out the order of a devotee as if he was the servant of the devotee. And this pleases the Lord like a father is pleased to carry out the order of his small child. Yes. Therefore he's addressing Krishna as the friend of Arjuna. So the Lord diminished the lifespans of the warriors there by his merciful glance. And Prabhupada makes the point that it's his diminishing the life of those warriors by his glance is his mercy, just as his being partial to the cause of Arjuna is his mercy to Arjuna. He was very merciful to the opposing party because he gave them salvation. Yes. So therefore the Lord is all good for everyone, Prabhupada says. Apparently it was victory for Arjuna, his intimate friend, but factually it was for the good of Arjuna's enemies. And Prabhupada concludes the purport, the Lord does no wrong in any circumstance because he's absolute, all good at all times. And there's an analogy here where Prabhupada has said, if you remember, we read it, that by executing the order of a devotee, the Lord becomes pleased, as a father is pleased to carry out the order of his small child. And Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur makes an interesting point. Listen to this. Just by his glance, showing to Arjuna, this is Bhishma, this is Drona, this is Karna, he took away their lives. Gosh, amazing. This actually indicates he took away their prarabdha karma. That since it'll be said later that those who saw him on the battlefield attained their original forms after death. So he took away their prarabdha karma. Verse 36, when Arjuna was seemingly polluted by ignorance upon observing the soldiers and commanders before him on the battlefield, the Lord eradicated his ignorance by delivering transcendental knowledge. May his lotus feet always remain the object of my attraction. So, Prabhupada makes the point that the leaders in this battle, the leaders, the generals, the kings, and all those people, they were in the front. Therefore, of course, it was easy for them to be pointed out to Arjuna, easy for Arjuna to see them. If they were in the back, Arjuna wouldn't have been able to see them. And Prabhupada makes the point that nowadays the so-called leaders, presidents and etc., they're always in the back. They're never out there in the front lines leading the charge. Yeah, this is all the corruption of Kali Yuga. And they just let the foolish young boys go out to fight and be killed. Yes. And Prabhupada makes the point that the citizens, they had no business. Why should they have to take part in the battle? They shouldn't have to take part. It's between the leaders. It's between the leaders. It's not between the citizens. Yes. So Arjuna saw all those people compassionately. He lamented that he had to kill them. But Prabhupada says he wasn't afraid. But as a merciful devotee, renunciation of worldly things was natural for him, and thus he decided not to fight. You know, that's Prabhupada referring to Arjuna in the first chapter of Bhagavad Gita, where Arjuna, for different reasons, he explains he doesn't want to fight. And normally we take it that Krishna criticizes him strongly for that. But actually here, Srila Prabhupada is pointing out that in another sense, it was a sign of the good character, the devotee nature of Arjuna. It wasn't simply just weakness of heart or something of that sort. So, yes. But anyway, still, Prabhupada goes on to say, it was due to a poor fund of knowledge, and therefore it's said here, his intelligence became polluted. So it can be looked at both ways, but generally, of course, we look at it from the point of view that he needed to be straightened out by Krishna. Yes. And Prabhupada makes the point that for an advanced pure devotee like Arjuna, he can't become polluted like that. So therefore it was special arrangement of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, just to facilitate the speaking of Bhagavad Gita for the benefit of us. So that's the situation. Very interesting. Really interesting. 37. Fulfilling my vow and sacrificing his own promise, he got down from the chariot, took up its wheel and ran towards me hurriedly, just as a lion goes to kill an elephant. He even dropped his outer garment on the way. So, again, Prabhupada makes some interesting points. Battle of Kurukshetra is a military thing. It's a big military thing with people being smashed and killed just all over the place. But Prabhupada says, at the same time, it was fought in a sporting spirit, like a friend's fight with another friend. Yeah. And Duryodhana insulted Bhishma that you're not really trying to kill Arjuna because you have some affection for him. And this got Bhishma all fired up, and he promised he would kill all the Pandavas the next day. And he kept some special arrows with him, Duryodhana, to be delivered the next day. They were arrows specifically for killing the Pandavas. But somehow by tricks during the course of the night, Arjuna took the arrows. And Bhishma knew this was a trick of Krishna. Yeah, so he took the vow that he would fight so hard the next day, Krishna would have to take up weapons himself, otherwise Arjuna would die. And Anyway, that's when Krishna picked up the wheel of the chariot and rushed to attack Bhishma. Prabhupada says, as a lion goes to kill an elephant. Well, that's actually in the verse, isn't it? And Bhishma Dev, when he saw this, he immediately gave up his weapons and stood to be killed by Krishna. Yes. So, verse 38, may he, Lord Sri Krishna, the personality of Godhead who awards salvation, be my ultimate destination. On the battlefield he charged me, as if angry because of the wounds dealt by my sharp arrows. His shield was scattered and his body was smeared with blood due to the wounds. It's all part of their transcendental exchange. So, Prabhupada makes the point in the purport that from this situation on the battlefield, it seems Krishna is partial to Arjuna and at enmity with Bhishma Dev. But actually this is all going on to show favor to Bhishma Dev. Yes. And Prabhupada makes the point, and this is really quite a point, the astounding feature of such dealings is that a devotee can please the Lord by playing the part of an enemy. The Lord, being absolute, can accept service from his pure devotee, even if the devotee is in the garb of an enemy. So, yeah, the Lord has no enemy. No one, if he did have, no enemy could hurt him, because he's Ajita, unconquerable. But still he takes pleasure when his pure devotee beats him like an enemy or rebukes him from a superior position. Like sometimes Mother Yashoda would rebuke Krishna. So these sorts of dealings are too transcendental for the non-devotees. They just cannot get it at all. You'd have to understand at least something, fair amount, about the science of bhakti to understand a point like this. Yeah. The all-spiritual body of the Lord can't be wounded, although it says there was blood and there were wounds. And the devotee cannot become the enemy of the Lord. All these things are impossible. But still in the loving dealings of this very extraordinary type, this is what happens. Yes. So, but the thing is that this apparent wounding of the Lord by Bhishma is to bewilder the atheists, because his body can't be bewildered. And if Bhishma were a real enemy, Krishna would have destroyed him immediately without moving, without jumping off the chariot, picking up the wheel, rushing towards him, all these things. Krishna would have just wiped him out. And of course, and Prabhupada makes this point, if Bhishma were an enemy, he would not have wanted Krishna to be his ultimate destination. And for Bhishma, Krishna's wounds made him more beautiful in ways Bhishma, could appreciate due to his rasa. And Prabhupada makes the point, really amazing point, that Krishna was moving towards Bhishma in spite of Arjuna's trying to check him, but he proceeded towards Bhishma Dev as a lover goes to a lover, without caring for hindrances. And verse 39, At the moment of death, this is Bhishma, of course, at the moment of death, let my ultimate attraction be to Sri Krishna, the personality of Godhead. I concentrate my mind upon the chariot driver of Arjuna, who stood with a whip in his right hand and a bridle rope in his left, who was very careful to give protection to Arjuna's chariot by all means. Those who saw him on the battlefield of Kurukshetra attained their original forms after death. Wow, that's amazing, isn't it? Prabhupada's really making it clear, original forms. Not the forms they have at this point, but their original forms from before in the spiritual world. So, Prabhupada makes the point that the pure devotees always see the Lord within themselves. They can never forget the Lord. This is called trance. And the yogis try to do the same thing by sense control and some process of austere meditation. But the devotee more easily attains samadhi by constantly remembering the Lord, by constantly serving the Lord. And so the concentration, the samadhi, you could say, the concentration of the mystic yogi and that of the devotee are not on the same level. Yes. The concentration of the mystic is mechanical, and for the devotees, it's natural, in pure love and spontaneous affection. So Bhishma, as a pure devotee, but a military pure devotee, constantly remembered the Lord in a military way as Parthasarathi, the chariot driver. So therefore the Lord's pastime of Parthasarathi is eternal. All the Lord's pastimes are eternal. It doesn't matter. I mean, basically all. It doesn't matter if they're in this rasa or that rasa or whatever. And Prabhupada concludes this paragraph. There's another paragraph, at least one. There's just another paragraph. Prabhupada concludes this first paragraph. As far as the military feature of the Lord is concerned, Bhishma Dev observed this with more relish than Arjuna. Arjuna didn't relish it as much as Bhishma, this military feature. And here's a little point from Jiva Goswami's purport here. Though the Lord went beyond limits, the cause was the Lord's natural compassion. Thus he liberated those who died on the battlefield. I pray I may have love for him. Yeah, okay, and there's a whole thing. Let me read it from Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. Like Bhishma speaking. I and not Arjuna saw with my eyes his beauty as he held the reins in his left hand, the whip in his right hand, while saying, hum, hum, to speed the horses. May I have love for that Krishna. So Bhishma saw that. Arjuna, he wasn't really looking so much at that. I desire to die now, for having died, I will constantly see that sweetness. If I'm revived, how will I see that? Because the Lord has brought about an end to his pastimes on this earth. The Lord's going to leave this world, and if I stay here, then I won't see him in this way. Bhishma does not say, I'm dying, but I want to die. He could die when he chose, and now he had developed great greed for directly participating in Krishna's pastimes. From this it's understood that the fighting pastimes are also eternal. What to speak of other pastimes? Krishna says, true, you have great attachment to my pastime as a charioteer, and relish that in each of your verses which spout from your mouth. You pray for prema for me in that pastime, but having died, what is your proof that you will attain that pastime? That's Krishna questioning. Bhishma replies, there's a well-known saying, whatever you think of when you die, you attain that. Seeing you at present is the highest proof. By seeing you, those who die, even being killed by others in the battle, even if they're demons, attain liberation, swarupam, of merging in Brahman, similar to the Jnanis. But I'm a devotee with thoughts just described, and dying while seeing you personally at the time of death, how can I not attain that pastime? Wow. Okay. That's sort of paraphrasing the third paragraph there. Yeah. So verse 40. Let my mind be fixed upon Lord Sri Krishna, whose motions and smiles of love attracted the damsels of Vrajadam, the gopis. The damsels imitated the characteristic movements of the Lord after his disappearance from the rasa dance. So, in other words, after he left the rasa dance, the gopis imitated his movements. Okay, so let's have a look at the purport. So, Prabhupada explains that because of their amazing service, the gopis got qualitative oneness with the Lord by dancing with him, embracing him, smiling at him, as if they're on an equal level. And the relationship of the Lord with Arjuna is great, it's wonderful. But Prabhupada says the relation of the gopis with the Lord is still more praiseworthy because of their still more purified loving service. Arjuna was fortunate enough to have friendly, fraternal service, but the Lord did not reward him with equal strength. But the gopis practically became one with the Lord, Prabhupada says, by attainment of an equal footing with the Lord. So Bhima, wanting to remember the gopis, is a prayer, Prabhupada says, to get their mercy also, the mercy of the gopis. Because the Lord is more satisfied when his pure devotees are glorified. So therefore, Bhishma Dev, he's glorified the acts of Arjuna, but not just that. Also, he's remembering the gopis for their unrivaled service to the Lord. So this equality should not be thought of to be the Sayuja Mukti, the merging of the impersonalists. This equality is one of perfect ecstasy, where the differential conception is completely eradicated, for the interests of the lover and the beloved become identical. So, it's perfect ecstasy in a type of oneness in the sense of the interests of the Lord and the devotees. And Srila Jiva Goswami makes a comment, "O my Lord, you live in the forest of Govardhan Hill, and like the king of elephants, you are expert in the art of conjugal love. O Master of the universe, your heart and Radharani's heart are just like shellac and are now melted by the heat of your love. Therefore one can no longer distinguish between you and Radharani. Now you have mixed your newly invoked affection, which is like vermilion, with your melted hearts, and for the benefit of the whole world, you have painted both your hearts red within this great palace of the universe. Wow, okay. Jiva Goswami, very amazing devotee. So verse 41, we're getting on fairly well. At the Rajasuya Yagya performed by Maharaj Yudhisthira, there was the greatest assembly of all the elite men of the world, the royal and learned orders, and in that great assembly Lord Sri Krishna was worshipped by one and all as the most exalted personality of Godhead. This happened during my presence, and I remembered the incident in order to keep my mind upon the Lord. So, Prabhupada's purport. So this is referring, of course, to the Rajasuya of Maharaj Yudhisthira. Sent a challenge horse out to see if everyone accepted him as the emperor. If anyone didn't accept him, then Yudhisthira and his team would go out and fight with them. And the king who protested would be killed and then replaced. Yes. So, but generally they all accepted. And Prabhupada makes the point in the first paragraph that such a yagya, Prabhupada says, such performances required hundreds of millions of dollars. And it was not an easy job for a petty king. What to speak of one of our presidents or prime ministers, it's just way beyond them. So it's now impossible in Kali Yuga, and for other, another point is there's no qualified Brahmins to do it, to act as the priests. Then, so in the second paragraph, Prabhupada points out, anyone who was anyone in the world came to that Rajasuya. Yes. Yeah, or everybody. The learned, the powerful, the Brahmins, the Kshatriyas, the Vaishyas, and you just name it. They all came. Maybe not so much the Vaishyas and the Sudras. Yeah. Prabhupada says at the end of the paragraph, due to the change of social activities in the modern age, the importance of men is also changed in terms of occupational positions. And then in the third paragraph, so the thing is, Krishna was the cynosure of everyone's eyes. Everyone wanted to see him. Everyone wanted to pay humble obeisances. So Bhishma is so happy that the Lord is such a great person, has come to see him just at the time of his death. So as Prabhupada points out, this indicates that the Lord was the most important person on the planet at that time. So, let's see. So Prabhupada contrasts Bhishma Dev's remembrance of the Lord and the impersonalist meditation on the impersonal feature of the Supreme. There's such a difference. For one thing, for the impersonalists, it's very rare they achieve what they want to achieve. And it's certainly not blissful, like the devotee's meditation is. Yes. So like this, Prabhupada concludes the purport The propaganda that a very great man is worshipped as God after his death is misleading, because a man after his death cannot be made into God. Nor can the personality of Godhead be a human being, even when he's personally present. Both ideas are misconceptions. The idea of anthropomorphism cannot be applicable in the case of Lord Krishna. Anthropomorphism means turning a human being or saying a human being is God. And verse 42, now I can meditate with full concentration on that one Lord Sri Krishna, now present before me, because now I've transcended the misconceptions of duality in regard to his presence in everyone's heart, even in the hearts of the mental speculators. He's in everyone's heart. The sun may be perceived differently, but the sun is one. So, Prabhupada discusses, the Lord is one, but he's expanded in so many different forms by his energy. The conception of duality is due to ignorance of his inconceivable energy, and it's only fools, Prabhupada refers to Bhagavad Gita 9:11. Only fools think he's an ordinary person. They're not aware of his inconceivable energies, and he's not going to show them. Yeah, he reserves that right. So, but his energies are such, he's in everyone's heart, as the sun is present before everyone all over the world. Paramatma is his expansion. Yes, and the Brahmajyoti is also expanded from him. And Prabhupada makes the interesting point, therefore there's no difference between him and his personal glow, the Brahmajyoti, or his plenary portions as Paramatma. No difference between him, Brahmajyoti, or Paramatma. This is all duality, which is basically nonsense. So now Bhishma is happy that Krishna is all in all for in everything. And this is how the devotees understand things, that Vasudeva Krishna is all in all. And there's no existence of anything without Vasudeva Krishna. And Prabhupada says that since Bhishma Dev is one of the Mahajans, both the neophytes and the devotees, the pure devotees, must follow in his footsteps. Then the second paragraph, the worshipful form of the Lord for Bhishma Dev is Parthasarathi, Krishna, the chariot driver of Arjuna. And the worshipable object of the gopis is the same Krishna, but in Vrindavan as Shamsundar, not exactly as Parthasarathi. And Prabhupada makes the point that some foolish scholars think that the Krishna of Vrindavan and Krishna of the Battle of Kurukshetra are different people, but Bhishma Dev doesn't think like that. He knows that they're both the same Krishna. So, and Prabhupada's making the point then that for impersonalists, for yogis, their goal is also Krishna, the Brahmajyoti Paramatma, but they're not full manifestations. In Krishna, there are both Brahmajyoti and Paramatma, but in Brahmajyoti or Paramatma, there's no Krishna. Yes. There are no sweet relations with Krishna. So in his personal feature, Krishna is both Parthasarathi and Shamsundar of Vrindavan. But in his impersonal feature, he's neither in the Brahma Jyoti, or maybe it should be his personal feature. He's neither in the Brahma Jyoti nor in the Paramatma. And the devotees, they understand all these things. And therefore they worship Lord Krishna with one-pointed attention, knowing him as the origin of all features. And verse 43, Sutta Goswami said, thus Bhishma Dev merged himself in the Supersoul, Lord Sri Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, with his mind, speech, sight, and actions. And thus he became silent, and his breathing stopped. Wow. So in other words, he passed away. That's it. He's just left his body. His breathing has stopped. So, this stage, Prabhupada says, attained by Bhishma Dev, is called Nirvikalpa Samadhi, because he merged himself into thinking of the Lord by engaging his mind in remembering the Lord's different activities. His speech in chanting the glories of the Lord, sight in seeing the Lord. In this way, every part of him, all of his activities were concentrated on the Lord in all respect. It's the highest stage of perfection. But devotees, everyone can attain this. You can too. We all can, by practicing devotional service. The 9 processes, hearing, chanting, remembering, serving the lotus feet, worshipping, praying, executing the orders, fraternizing, and fully surrendering. All of them, any one of them, or all of them, or some of them, are equally competent to give us the ultimate result. But Prabhupada makes the very important point, and you should note this, please. The first item, hearing, is the most important item of all. And therefore hearing of Bhagavad Gita and later on Srimad Bhagavatam is essential for the serious candidate who wants to attain the same stage as Bhishma Dev in the end. So this stage that Bhishma Dev achieved, anyone can achieve it, even though the Lord may not be personally present. Because his words in Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, are identical with him. They're sound incarnations of the Lord. And one can utilize them to realize the Lord, as Bhishma did. Everyone has to die, but one who dies like Bhishma Dev attains perfection. The human form of life is especially meant for dying like Bhishma Dev. So, devotees, this brings us to the last section from verse 44 to 49. Obviously, we're going to have to carry on Monday, but that's fine. We covered a lot tonight. So, Hare Krishna, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai.